We're going to cover a lot of territory, and I just want to give you a rundown of basically how Ableton works for you. Now, some of this stuff might seem a little confusing or unfamiliar to you. That's completely okay. As we go through this, you'll get more and more familiar with some of the terms. So this is just a light introduction, just to get your head around a little bit about the way Ableton works. So I hope this helps. Basically what we have here is this program, obviously a multi-track audio recording program. You could have as many audio tracks or MIDI tracks as you would like, and you could just simply insert as many audio tracks as you want. Insert audio track here. So now you have 2 audio and 1 MIDI, and you can have as many as you want, like I said. Now this window here is just one aspect of the program. If you hit your tab key, you get a different window right here. But they're both the representations of the same thing in different ways of recording. So let me get basically into that. This is what you would call your session window. And it's also your mixing window, because this is where you actually have your volume levels here. There are other ways to edit your volume, but we'll get into that later. Essentially, in the session window, this works really well when you are recording loops and putting together your song from loops and then trying to organize your song from there. And essentially, the way this works is you would be able to drag in your audio part or drag in a MIDI instrument into your tracks and make loops. And then all the tracks here that you have, everything that you have in this, what you call a scene, you could be triggered by one button over here. So what you can essentially do is organize each of your scenes for a different part of a song. For example, this scene can be an intro, this can be a verse, a bridge, a chorus, a break, and an outro, if you wanted to approach it that way. And then you could kind of jam out your song the way that you like it on the fly until you're happy with it. And as you jam it out, it will actually allow you to record all the parts onto separate tracks in your arrangement window, which is over here. So eventually everything needs to get into your arrange window when you're going to do a mix down. And this arrangement window is pretty similar to many other programs like Acid or Cubase or Pro Tools, where you're just recording everything linear. So let's get into some of the basic things. Another great thing about this program is there's no windows that can get lost. Everything that you want is within this window, or if you hit the tab key, this window here. And if you need more space or more room, you could simply hide certain things. Like, for example, this whole browser area can be hidden by hitting this arrow key, and this bottom section here that I'll explain can be hidden just by dragging it down. And then that gives you a lot more room here. Now over on this side, you have other ways of making more room as well. This here is actually a crossfader section. This here is track delay. There's your mixer. There's your sends. There's your returns. And this is your in and out setup here. And we will get into more of that as we go. But essentially, everything that you need is always going to be right where you need it to be. You're not going to need to hunt for a window that's hidden behind another window. So that's a really great thing with Ableton. Now let's talk about how audio and MIDI tracks work and getting parts into your track. Over here is your browser, and pretty much everything from your instruments to your plugins to your audio are going to show up here in this window. And it just depends on which one of these icons you're hitting. So up here, this is all the things that come loaded with Ableton. So let's go into our instruments here. And we have Impulse, which is a drum machine type of program. Operator, which is like a synthesizer. Sampler, well, that's self-explanatory. And Simpler, which is basically a simpler version of Sampler. And if you're going to drag in an instrument, you need a MIDI track, and over here we have a MIDI track. So let me show you a little bit about how that works. So I want to drag in a drum machine, which is Impulse, and I'm just going to use a preset kit. As we get further into this DVD, you'll figure out a bunch of different tricks that you can do with this program. But if I'm to drag this in, I could simply drag it over here to my MIDI window, and then it drops it down here. So this window here is where you actually see your instrument. Also, this window is where you would lay down your effects. So you've got all these different effects, and let me just drag a few things in. I got a delay and a reverb and let's say a phaser. Let me try that one again. Okay, so now you're saying, all right, well, it looks like I'm kind of lost here because I can't see my drum machine. That's completely okay. As you follow the arrow here, down here, this kind of allows you to drag over and get back to whatever you're looking for, whether it be an effect or your original instrument. So in this case, by clicking up here where the name is, you're going to get all the effects in the instrument. Now, if we were to make a clip, a MIDI part, I could double click here, and this creates a clip, and now this becomes all the properties for this new window. And we can get into this later, of course, but all your properties are here, and then you, of course, have more options down here. So you kind of want to look at these little buttons. You're going to see them all over Ableton, and it's going to be, if you're looking for something and you don't see it, it's usually going to be that you need to turn one of these buttons on. So when you double click on the clip, you're going to get all the clip properties. When you double click on the name, you're going to get the actual instrument and the effects. And that's the same thing for audio. If I go over here to audio, we will, let me get you into some of these first real quick. So this is all the stuff that comes with Ableton. If you hit this little plug thing, these are all the plugins that it will take externally. So if you have external plugins, this is where they'll show up, and you can use them just in the same way that you would use any other plugin. Down here, these are just 3 different memory locations on your hard drive. So this is where you can actually find different samples or whatever. For example, if I was looking for kick drums, I can go here and I could either browse here for different kick drums or whatever, or I can click inside of a folder and come up right here where this magnifying glass is, click it, hit kick, and give it a few seconds, and it's going to find all kinds of different kicks, which is great. Now this icon here, it looks like little headphones. This is kind of your cueing, so you could actually sample each of these and see which one you like. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit just so it's not too loud. And you could kind of come in here and look for your audio parts here. And the volume might be a little bit low for you, but essentially it's going to play each of these parts for you. So let me get out of there and get back into a couple other things real quickly. I'm going to go back into this plugin area because I want to show you when you drag in a plugin. Let me just make a new MIDI track. I'm going to go Insert, MIDI track. If I'm to drag in, let's say, a synthesizer, and I'll grab in the B4, which is like an organ. So I drag this down here, and you just see this here, and it doesn't look much like an instrument to you. Well, that's okay. Everything that you drag in is kind of going to look like this, no matter what kind of plugin it is. And all you simply have to do is hit this little wrench thing here, and it will actually open up your instrument. So now we have the instrument here. And in order to play that instrument, you would just simply hit this button here, which is called arming your track, and then hit your key on your keyboard. And that tells Ableton that you want to hear the sound that's generated on this track, which is our organ. So that's how that works there. Let's get into the basic mixing. This here is your panning left and right. This will turn the track on and off. So basically if it's off here, you're not going to hear the sound on that track. Solo should be obvious, and we just went into arming your tracks. So that if you want to record something or play something, you got to hit that first. And if we get in over here, you're going to notice it's all the same icons here, turning your tracks on and off and everything over in this area. Now if you have audio in here, let me go here, and let's see if we can get some audio in real quick. Doesn't really matter what I drag in, so I'll just drag this in. So this is audio here, and if we click this here, it's going to open it up and we're actually going to be able to see our audio here. Now, the way that you get closer in this, there's not really a clicking. You basically come up here and you see this little magnifying glass. When you see that, then you can just left click on the mouse and drag down, and that's going to bring you in closer. And if you drag up, it's going to bring you further out. So that's going to be how you're going to get in close and out. A lot of your editing is going to be done with this tool here, this pencil tool. This will allow you to actually draw. This, in this case, this is just turning it on and off. But over here you can actually manipulate the panning, volume, and everything. So you can automate things here with a pencil. And take that pencil off if you want to do cut, copy, and pasting. It's just kind of like clicking and dragging. And then you can take this little highlighted part, click and drag, and you can move your parts. Control Z will undo anything that you do. Up here, this is going to be the bars that you're at. So this is beats and bars, and down here is your actual time frame. This here is a little loop indicator. So if you want to loop a certain section, you would grab which bars you want to loop, and then when you hit play and click this over here, this loop, it would go ahead and loop around. Over here, this is your tempo. So this is where you would set the tempo of your song if you're using loops or whatever. That's pretty important. Here is your metronome. So if you want to click track while you're playing, something to play to, that's what you're going to want to hit there. As far as tempo, you could double click and just type in whatever tempo you want. Or you can click on it and drag upward or down. Either way works fine. And that is your basic intro to Ableton.